Hello everyone, this is Evan with GuideStar. I'm really excited to be launching our new video series today. We're calling it The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. I'm going to focus on a topic in cybersecurity today that everyone is impacted by, and that's passwords. What makes a good password? What makes a bad one? What's an ugly one? I'm going to walk you through 3 scenarios that I think will be very easy to relate to and should give you some good pointers and tips on how you should be doing this if you're not doing it this way already. First, let's talk about the good. I want to introduce you to Cheryl. Cheryl's the CEO of a 150-person manufacturing company in the Midwest. In 2020, Cheryl and her company fell prey to a ransomware attack that took several of their systems out for a couple of days. Since then, they've decided to invest in more and better cybersecurity. And in doing so, they've changed their password policy to align with the newest and best standards. Cheryl represents a good password. Cheryl's password is, "Don't dance in golf spikes." I know it sounds silly, but let's work through why this is a good password. First, length is king with a password. Let's also talk about the fact that Cheryl is using a passphrase, a series of words that, while don't really make that much sense, are fairly easy to remember. Cheryl's also got some really good controls in place at her company. They use multi-factor authentication for every system that they have that they log into. They train their people to never use the same password for more than one system, and especially not to mix personal use passwords with work-based passwords. Now, sometimes that can get a little confusing if you have multiple passwords, especially when they're long and strange to remember. Then Cheryl's company has invested in a password manager that allows them to store their passwords in a secure location and makes them easy to integrate with browsers and other systems for logon. Cheryl and her company are doing the right things to keep themselves, their customers, and their systems safe. Now let's move on to the bad. Glenn is the regional manager of an upscale, independently owned chain of resorts. Now, back in 2017, the resort owners and the leadership decided to bring in a local IT company to implement some security standards and controls. We talked before about how length is king. Well, Glenn's 8-character password isn't very long. Glenn also is an avid sports car enthusiast. He drives a '69 red Mustang. He loves it. It's his baby. It's all over social media. Glenn's password is redcar!7. Now, under normal circumstances, that doesn't seem very easy to guess, but if you know Glenn, maybe you'd think about redcar!7. The other thing that hackers do is these complexity rules create patterns in users. Most people who are forced to have an uppercase letter in their password, the first character is uppercase. That makes it easier for hackers to guess. Most people who are required to have a special character or a number, those special characters and numbers come at the end of their passwords, like Glenn. Now, Glenn has a few behaviors and hasn't been trained as well as Cheryl has, and even though he meets the needs of his systems, he's doing some things that leave his company and his accounts at risk. Glenn uses his redcar!! password for almost all of his other passwords. When he's prompted to change his password at 60 days, all he actually does is increment the number at the end. So when Glenn started, his first password was redcar!1. Since then, he's had to change his password several times, and he's up to 7, and I imagine he'll get to 8, 9, or 10 someday. Now, I think that Glenn's company did some good things in 2017. They tried to implement standards, and at that time, those standards were actually fairly industry accepted. But it's important to note that over time, even investments you can make in security, as hackers change the way they do things, as people look to gain access to your systems, you have to be willing to respond and keep up to the best practices. Now, let's move on to the ugly. It's important to note that as you're watching this video, if you feel like you fall into the bad or the ugly, don't worry. Everybody's cybersecurity journey starts somewhere. And even in the example of Cheryl with the good, they implemented their change after they fell victim. My goal, though, is to help educate you so that you can put these controls in place before you have to have that kind of "I told you so" moment. So getting back to the ugly example, let's talk about Andy. Andy's the owner of a small sporting goods retail location in a small town. Andy doesn't see a whole lot of value in IT as it doesn't help him sell fishing poles or kayaks or hiking boots. However, he does have systems interconnected for supply chain management, ordering, email for employees. He's got some sales staff that are doing things. And so he does have some things that he has to keep protected behind his systems. Now, Andy doesn't have any enforced password standards. His systems don't have anything mandating complexity, length, or MFA. All of their systemic logins use the same username and password. The username is Andy, and the password is love2fish, the name of the business. Andy has asked everyone at the business to make that their password for their individual email accounts as well, so that when people take vacation or if something comes up and they're unavailable, that Andy and the other leaders can have access to those email accounts and be able to see what's going on. He also uses that same password or some derivative of it for all of his personal accounts and banking information. So why is really with Andy, it's a matter of time until they fall prey to an email-based compromise with a password giveaway and they get a ransomware attack, just like Cheryl's company did so many years ago. However, Andy has time. Andy needs to consider the impacts of losing data, systems, or information and availability of those systems to his business and decide to make some changes. He needs to bring in a partner that can help him with that and make sure that there's a mechanism in place to keeping that standard up to date. So there you have it, folks. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I really want to thank you for tuning in. Hopefully some of this was helpful for you. I would like to encourage you to follow GuideStar on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, and also to subscribe to our blog at guide-star.com, where there's tons of good content and other things about how you can help keep your business safe. Remember, make sure it's legit before you commit and try not to get burned. Stay safe out there, everyone.